The next session is on the topic Navigating Ocean Freight Rates and Maritime Industry Challenges. This session gathers industry experts to explore the volatility of ocean freight rates and key challenges in the maritime sector in 2025. Topics include unpredictable rate fluctuations, port congestion, environmental regulations, and shifting trade policies. The discussion highlights strategies for exporters, importers, and logistics providers to build resilience, adapt to regulatory changes, and leverage on technology. Session 2, ladies and gentlemen, brings together decision makers to share insights, data, and strategic approaches for navigating the ever-changing global maritime landscape. It's a privilege to invite our panelists for the second session of Voice of Ladies in Logistics. Put your hands together to welcome Ms. Preeta George, Director, Starfish Exports Private Limited. Preeta George is a Managing Director of Starfish Exports Private Limited, and her journey in the seafood export industry reflects resilience, vision, and deep-rooted industry knowledge. Since the establishment of Starfish Exports in 1994, she has steered the company's growth from a regional processor to a globally trusted exporter. Her leadership blends operational expertise with a strong focus on quality, sustainability, and international market standards, positioning the company as a respected name in Kerala's seafood sector. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Ms. Preeta George. Thank you so much, Ms. George. Kindly be seated. I'd like to invite on stage Ms. Manisha Malhotra, Vice President, Freight Forwarding Sales, SCO, DP World. Ms. Manisha Malhotra is a Vice President, Freight Forwarding Sales, SCO at DP World with over 25 years of experience in logistics and freight forwarding. She has led regional teams across India, ASEAN, and Asia Pacific, driving business retention, strategy growth, digital transformation, and operational excellence while building strong partnerships with global customers. Ms. Manisha Malhotra with us today. Welcome. Our next panelist on stage, Ms. Hetal Phillips, Director, SeaTech Shipping and Projects Private Limited. Ms. Hetal Phillips, Director and co-founder of SeaTech Shipping and Projects Private Limited, is a seasoned maritime professional with over two decades of hands-on experience across finance, documentation, chartering, and agency operations. Rising from early family responsibilities to becoming a business leader, she has played a key role in policy coordination for coastal shipments and pioneering IMO container movements from Cochin. Guided by resilience and integrity, she leads with the motto, committed to deliver. Ms. Hetal Phillips with us. Welcome, Ms. Phillips. Our next panelist on stage, please welcome Ms. Joyce Tai, Executive Vice President, Worldwide Partnership, Freightos Group. Ms. Joyce Tai is Executive Vice President, Worldwide Partnerships and Managing Director, APAC at Freightos, a global revenue and transformation leader with 20 plus years of experience. She has owned P&L and led APAC across regional teams. She works closely with CEOs and boards to scale enterprise, SaaS, and platform businesses, driving growth, organizational alignment, and long-term enterprise value. Ladies and gentlemen, Ms. Joyce Tai with us. Thank you so much for joining us, and welcome to God's own country. Let's move on to our next panelist on stage, Ms. Divya James, Head Air and Ocean Freight, Indian Subcontinent, Seva Logistics. Divya James is a senior logistics and supply chain leader with 20 plus years of experience across the Indian subcontinent, driving profitable growth in air and ocean freight forwarding. Known for strategic transformation, operational turnarounds, and large-scale change management, Divya excels in building high-performing teams, strengthening governance, and delivering sustainable bottom-line results. Ms. Divya James at the Voice of Ladies in Logistics. Welcome, Ms. James. And now let's invite Ms. Deepa Joshi, Commercial Director, Unifeeder, on stage. Ms. Joshi, Commercial Director and Branch Head at DP World Shipping Solutions, Mumbai, brings over 3 decades of leadership in India's shipping and logistics industry. She has driven feedering growth, expanded strategic partnerships, and built strong coastal trade networks. A committed mentor, she champions women's leadership across maritime and supply chain sectors. Ladies and gentlemen, a loud round of applause for Ms. Deepa Joshi on stage. Welcome. Moving on to our next panelist on stage, Ms. Chitra Yeshudas, Cluster Head, Hapag-Lloyd AG. Ms. Chitra Yeshudas is a seasoned shipping and freight forwarding professional with 20 plus years of industry experience. Beginning her career at Maersk Line in customer service, she progressed through diverse leadership roles to become Regional Sales Head, Central India at Hapag-Lloyd. Known for driving P&L performance, strategic growth, and high-impact teams, she consistently delivers sustainable revenue and operational excellence across logistics and supply chains. A loud round of applause for Ms. Chitra Yeshudas, and welcome. And now, ladies and gentlemen, let me invite our moderator on stage, Dr. Sharmila Amin, Managing Director, Bertling Logistics India Private Limited, to take the session forward. She is the South Asian Regional Director and Managing Director of Bertling Logistics, a commerce graduate from the University of Mumbai. She also holds qualifications in shipping management from IIM Ahmedabad and is a customs license holder, Rule 9, Mumbai. With deep logistics expertise, she serves as a non-executive independent director at Hindustan Oil Exploration Company Limited, contributing strongly to corporate governance and compliance. Welcoming on stage the ever-energetic Dr. Sharmila Amin. Thank you for joining us, ma'am, and I request you to take forward the session.
Good afternoon, everybody. I know this session is just before your lunch, but we assure you that these ladies here on the stage are going to make it very exciting for you and fun, and we're going to have a little bit of music and dance also from them. So, first of all, welcome to distinguished guests, industry colleagues and friends. It's both an honor and a privilege to moderate the session too for the Voice of Ladies of Logistics Forum. My sincere compliments to India Trade, Mr. Sudhir Nambiar, for creating a platform that moves the conversation beyond representation into impact. We meet at a defining moment for global shipping. Over the past few years, ocean freight has transitioned from being a relatively stable cost component to becoming a boardroom-level strategic variable. Rate volatility, capacity realignment, blank sailings, geopolitical disruptions, regulatory pressures, decarbonization mandates, and evolving trade lanes have fundamentally reshaped the maritime economics. Freight rates today are no longer just a function of supply and demand. They are influenced by network realization, alliance strategies, fuel transitions, canal constraints, regional conflict, and increasing environmental compliance costs. For exporters, importers, and freight forwarders, this means one thing: resilience must replace predictability. As logistics professionals, we are navigating uncertain transit times, capacity realignment across alliances, pressure on margin, ESG-linked implications, digital transformations, redefining visibility and pricing transparency. But challenges also create inflection points. The maritime industry is undergoing structural changes. Decarbonization initiatives, green corridors, alternate fuels, digital freight platforms, predictive analytics, and enhanced collaboration models are just not trends, they are redefining competitive advantage. The key question before us today is not will volatility continue? It is how do we strategically position ourselves to thrive within volatility? And that is why this particular panel is very powerful. We have with us leaders who represent shipping lines, freight forwarders, exporters, digital platforms, and integrated logistics player. Each one of these ladies brings a unique lens on pricing, dynamics, customer strategy, operational adaptation, and long-term positioning. Through this discussion, we will explore how should business interpret current rate signals? Are we entering a phase of structural normalization or continued cyclicality? How can freight forwarders protect margins while delivering value? What role will technology and partnership play in mitigating risk? And importantly, how do we build sustainable, future-ready supply chains in a cost-sensitive environment? Shipping has always been cyclic. Leadership, however, is not. The leaders on this stage have navigated disruptions and relatively but strategically. Today's conversation will not be about reacting to freight rates. It will be about shaping strategy in an era of maritime transformation. I encourage the audience to listen through two lenses. One, what tactical adjustment must you make immediately? And what structural changes must you commit in the next 5 years? Because freight rates fluctuate, strategy must not. With that, it gives me great pleasure to welcome my esteemed panelists. Let us begin a discussion that is practical, forward-looking, grounded in real industry insight. Thank you, and welcome all of you. I have a really tough panel, huh? Look at all of them. They're smiling. Okay, so I'm going to start with, I don't know, I have the order wrong here, but I'll start the first one with Divya. Welcome, Divya. As a global 3PL managing multiple carrier relationship, how are you balancing contract versus spot exposure for customers amid continued rate volatility? And you know what? I don't want any of you to discuss what Mr. Trump is doing, because this is not about Mr. Trump, this is about us, this is about India and what's happening in the world.
Sure.
Thanks.
So thank you everyone, and in advance, Happy Women's Day to each and everyone. It's a pleasure to be a part of this panel discussion, especially in Cochin because I'm a Malayali, I belong to Kerala, and this is my first panel or a speaking discussion in Kerala. So thank you so much, Sudhir, for creating an environment very well organized. So coming back to the question which you asked, I think we have moved from the traditional freight forwarding or how we look at the whole supply chain, especially from a cost factor. Today, it's all about portfolio strategy. And what does that mean? Is any core business, the total proportion of your core business, that should be split into two. One is the contractual long-term rates, where a capacity is taken care of, and a percentage which is more dynamic, wherein the advantages of the market, of the ever-changing market, is benefited in the whole supply chain. The cost components always have played a very, very vital role compared to the value anyone brings to the table, and hence cost has to be looked just not as a cheap, but what value does it add, and how does it immune the constant VUCA world which we are into, which is constantly turbulent. COVID has taught us a lot of lessons, and it is important that we don't get carried away saying that it's going to be normal. The new normal is constant change. Constantly we are changing. It doesn't come announced. It's like an accident. We don't know what are we going to walk into tomorrow. So it's important, how do we create strategy? Like you said, it's important that we are focusing on a resilient and more stable foundation rather than being reactive to what's happening. Being resilient is having a strategy as an organization. You sign up for that, and may what come, you know what you are going to get into.
Thank you so much, and thanks. Just for the panels, you all have got enough time, but we'll restrict each question to maximum 3 minutes, if you don't mind, so that everyone gets a chance to express their views. Manisha, I'd like to ask the next one to you. With the shippers demanding predictability over lowest cost, how are you helping customers hedge against disruptions and sudden rate spikes?
I think that's a very valid question. Before I get to the answer, again, thanks to Sudhir and thanks to C-Trade for organizing this on Women's Day. And I wish everyone, each women leader in this room, a happy Women's Day. So my answer to this question is going to be a little different. The exporter or the buyer or even the importer in our land, that's India, has become very well aware. And that's because of everything being available, readily available. Digital, the way forward, we just spoke about it in the previous session as well. The customers are choosing predictability over the cost now. When we say predictability, we say that they are looking forward that how well they can place themselves, and that's not a short-term game anymore. They don't be committed, they're not committed for long term, but they see the real value. And when we say the real value, it's just not the freight rate or what is the cost, because any $1 or $10 here less or there less is something that's not the game now anymore. They see to the value that you bring, how well you are placed globally, and what is the complete integrated solution that you can give to the customer. The value comes in the real value and the solutioning to their supply chain. So we as DP World, I think we are partnering, and we took last year where we opened global offices, and we are trying to integrate a lot of supply chain solutions for our customers, bringing predictability to their supply chain, forecasting it better, various platforms for them, contracting smarter with them is something that we are doing. So at the end of the day, keeping customer centricity, not only for them, but for their end customer is the way forward, how we do it.
Preeta, now for you. From an exporter standpoint, what has been the biggest pain point in the last 2 years? Rates, space, schedule reliability, or documentation? Don't say all.
Thank you for the question. And I'm very happy to be part of this panel. I am from Cochin. I hail from Cochin, and my father has been in this industry for the last 50 years. And extremely happy to be part of this audience here who supports logistics and who supports exporter, importers. Thank you for the question too. From an exporter perspective, what I would like to say is gone are the days when logistics cost was part of any smaller discussion. Shipping and the shipping logistics cost is much beyond a strategic risk variable today. And if you ask me if it is just, which were the points that you told me, it was documentation. Yeah, so it is not just these, but it is actually
Rates, space, schedule reliability, and or documentation.
I would say it is a holistic reliability. It is not just a component of these factors, but it is a holistic reliability, because it's not just cost as a single most important factor that decides how reliable you are as a strategic partner for your partner abroad. So how reliable holds with regards to not just cost, but then there are a lot of volatility, stacked volatility that happens, but you need to have a system around these stacked volatility as to how faster and how durable you can hold on to these decisions and move your goods and reach it to your end customer.
Thank you. At least you didn't answer that all of them. I'm glad. That's a good one. Now, Chitra, you represent one of the largest shipping lines. Of course, now with Zim taken over at 1.5 billion, you guys are now in the 1, 2, 3 bracket. As carriers are often criticized for capacity discipline and pricing power, what is your take on that?
Thank you. I'm Chitra, and Sudhir, Seatrade, thank you for this opportunity. I echo what Divya said. It's a great honor for me to represent this forum here in my hometown. I'm also from Kerala, and I'm representing the industry in my hometown. That's a great privilege for me, so thank you for it. So I know Dr. Sharmila, when Sudhir invited us last year, we were in a scenario where, we were reeling under the US impact, and we were wondering what the outlook for this year is to be, and the situation has just changed in this last 1 week, right? So the question is very relevant. So capacity discipline is often misunderstood to be a tool for pricing control. Every market needs a certain sense of discipline, and that will happen when you're able to align your supply to realistic demands and operational constraints. And for that, it's very important for carriers to do the planning of the vessel deployment, planning of equipment, sailing schedules, it's then we are able to maintain the consistency and long-term service integrity. So, coming back to, when we are dealing with a market, when the demand is dropping, disciplined capacity management becomes the need of the hour, right? Because you're preventing the market from collapsing and you're also managing your financial stability. For example, last year, like I mentioned, when the US impact was announced, some of the carriers scheduled blankings intentionally, preempting that there is going to be a drop in the demand. So, to preserve the network discipline, that was a necessity. So, I would say capacity discipline is more of risk management, so that, we maintain the stability of the network and we don't, a market collapse of rates doesn't happen.
Thank you, Chitra. So, before we started this, we had Joyce asking me a very nice question. She's telling me, I am not an Indian. Is that okay? I don't know whether I'll be accepted. Joyce, let me tell you what our Prime Minister always states, which I will say it in Sanskrit first and translate for you. Atithi Devo Bhav. World is one and we unite and we welcome you to India. So it's a pleasure for us.
Thank you.
That you are here in India for all of us.
Thank you.
Yeah. So tell me, has greater rate transparency reduced the information asymmetry, or has it at least simply shifted the pricing power?
Thank you, ma'am. And it's really my pleasure to be here. I'm actually in India very often, like every 2 months, because our Asia headquarters is in Chennai. And we are in India since 2020 after an acquisition in Chennai. And we have a full spectrum team there. We have R&D, my HR partner is there, my finance partner is there, everybody's there. So I am a relatively new name for Seatrade in India, but Freightos has been working with the air industry, especially out of India, since 2020. And we are very excited to be invited in this forum to get to know all of you. Okay, so this is a short introduction. Now, coming back to information and rate transparency and this topic, when I started 8 years ago, I was the first Asian employee for Freightos, and I walk into every single room of the freight forwarding offices, and they were telling me that they do not believe in pricing discovery. They need pricing discovery, number one, but they do not believe in rate transparency. They believe that their profitability lies in keeping their rates as their secret sauce. And I was thinking to myself, oh my God, I obviously signed up for the wrong job, because transparency has been very, very big in other industries where I came from. Manufacturing, automation, e-commerce, smart packaging, and all that. People were talking about data, API play since 20 years ago. And I remember when I was talking to Alibaba group 8 years ago about freight as a service, a full API play, they told me that, Joyce, you are the first person coming to our campus talking to us about that. So this is where. Okay, I believe that, first of all, digitization is an equalizer. And the equalizer is balancing power of both supply and demand. So 8 years fast forward till today, I don't think any freight forwarder will say that their profitability lies in keeping their rates as a secret. Meaning rate transparency, especially for export, is a common norm. There are, however, markets, stations, and cultures where it may be still the case. But as for India, I remember 6 years ago when I came over here, and nobody believed in digitization, by the way, like very few. I talked about rate, quote, and book. And people say that I can call a guy who call a guy who call a guy. And that is what they mean by semi-automation workflow, yeah? But as far as right now is concerned, the digitization technology and everything behind it, first of all, information asymmetry, keeping something as a secret sauce is really no longer. It's a balancing play, it's giving power to both supply and demand, and the pricing power, supply and demand have to come to the same table, talking about better forecasting, better demand planning, better capacity planning, better SOP, better SLA. It's all digitized. So I really believe that it's no longer the case, and that the power has been shifted, but to both sides. Both demand, both supply are being empowered.
Thank you, Joss. I'm going to take it up later on with some more questions on the same topic, which will continue with you. But I'll come back to you now, Deepa. Since you represent a feeder shipping line, how critical are feeder and regional networks in maintaining the supply chain for you?
Looking at feeder operators, basically there is a limitation where there are few feeder operators which have been existing in India. While we look at it, the mainline operators have been the core major suppliers in the trade. But then there are times, there are infrastructures where, they require feeder operators also to operate, like smaller ports, where the draft is less. So they are the places where you need to, have a feeder operator come in. The variety of the size of vessels is so very important at such stages, where a big mainline ship cannot just go and berth. So these things is where it comes to, there's a requirement of a feeder operator which comes into margin, basically. While we look at the scenario a few years back, if I say 2 decades back, all main lines were, they were working very closely with the feeder operators. So we used to have the main lines loading on our vessels. And then there was a huge volume in tons. So 6,000 from Hapag-Lloyd, 5,000 from CMA, those were the bookings that I've personally booked. Then a stage came in where the main lines started calling by themselves. They started bringing their own vessels with a variety of sizes, So the scenario completely changed. So my customers changed from a mainline operator to NVOCCs also. So there are so many NVOCCs who are there with the boxes, but they don't have the connectivity. So that's where we come in picture as a feeder operator, connecting and offering connectivity to the trade on a long run, It could be coastal, it could be international, it could be, intra-regional also. So this is something which is a very different and unique way of performing for the feeders in this trade.
But with the cabotage law being withdrawn now, is the coastal still on for your line?
Yes, very much. In fact, I would just want to refer over here, the cabotage law was there 3 years back, okay? The scene was completely different. Every foreign flag vessel was coming in and loading from one port in India to another port, and life was simple for them. So that's where we, as a feeder operator, lost a lot of business. So that was absolutely a shock. And this time, if you ask me, the main lines, I'm sure, are a little upset that, they'll not be getting their vessels to be calling in with the foreign flags, and they'll have to convert their flags into Indian flags.
But that
so
also still is a big
So now
challenge.
again, there's opportunity for business for us. So I've seen these ups and downs in all these years, which is very interesting, and this keeps the balance and the stability in the trade is what we've observed.
We'll come back to that competition later, but on this stage, we are all friends right now. So, Hetal, I'll come back to you, because see, we're going to have to dance with each other later on after this gets over. So, you'll have to choose your right partner then. So, Hetal, coming back to you, being a specialist in project logistics, I've seen you grow over the years, great career graph. Project cargo operates in a very different freight environment, yeah? How do rate volatility and vessel availability impact project timelines and feasibility for you?
Thank you, madam. Thank you so much. Thank you, Sea-Trade India Sea-Trade. Thank you, Mr. Suresh Nambia, for this opportunity. And I'm very glad to be here with all the panelists and Sharmila madam. And thank you so much. Having come to the project cargo execution, so we at Sea-Tech India has been specialized in execution of the project cargos. So if I have to define the project cargo, it is, in simple terms, it is oversize, non-standard dimensions, and a heavy lift cargo. So fundamentally, it is completely different than the liner trade and container shipping. And it cannot often wait for the better freight and price because it is a timeline sensitive. Having said that, the heavy lift multi-purpose cargo vessels are very limited in the market. And with the right vessel at the right time, availability is very difficult. So the vessel availability matters the most in this case for handling the project cargo. With regards to the rate volatility, it completely affects the entire budget for the project cargo execution. And if there is a significant swing in the rate volatility, that can alter the entire projection cost. So in short, the rate volatility can impact the financial risk in the project management. And this both vessel availability and the rate volatility can be maintained by pre-booking. The key is to pre-book the vessel. The key is to have a technical expertise for the entire cargo, and at the same time a skilled manpower and a close coordination with the carriers and operators, we can have a profitable and a successful execution of the project cargo. Thank you so much.
Coming back, I've got lots of examples I'm going to share at the end of all this. I'm going back to Divya now. With my second question to Divya, what capabilities do customers now expect beyond freight bookings? Visibility, risk management, inventory positioning, and how has this changed Siva's service model?
Sure. I think today the customers expect us to be supermans, astronauts, psychiatrists, and all of it together. I think it has evolved.
You forgot the most important, bankers.
Indeed. But I think it has evolved so much, wherein earlier it was looked as freight forwarders as moving the cargo from point A to B. COVID has got the freight forwarding or the supply discussions on the White House or in the White House. That's where I think the whole shift has happened of looking at it much more seriously of how vital supply chain is. And in Siva, what we do is, whether it is contract logistics, which is to keep the inventory line thin, which eventually translates into the whole cash flow for an organization, whether it is ground and rail, how do we have a multi-product so that we give customer the flexibility to use all portfolio of the products, or whether it is FVL, which is finished vehicle logistics, or freight forwarding, a mixture of all, wherein today the customers are looking that you go to a place with their problem and that's taken care of. Now, how that's taken care of is where they don't want to get involved, but of course they would need something which is very cost effective, at the same time more dependable, more reliable. And that is where organizations like Siva come into play, where we just don't look at the traditional freight forwarding. We are constantly, and I also feel it's markets which is asking that you don't look or you don't work the same way every day. Every day is different. Today, after 2 decades, I feel I'm still a fresher, because it's so much. Every day we are reinventing ourselves to see and address the ever-changing environment. What we plan yesterday is not going to be relevant today or tomorrow. So how do we how do we catch up the pace, just not wait for it, but also sort of predict or see what's coming. All the customers who I walk into, they would expect me to have a crystal ball saying that, what do you think is going to happen next? How do you think the freight levels are going? And I always say that my short-term view is this, and long-term from what we hear from our customers, who are a mix of manufacturers, who are a mix of traders, who are a mix of all type of categories. We hear from them, we hear from shipping lines, we hear from airlines, and of course then a sort of tentative predictability is put forward to plan their supply chain.
It's great. Thank you. Manisha, for me to ask you this, how important is data-driven forecasting today in ocean freight procurement, and where do you still see the gaps?
So we all say data is the king, and as we spoke about it also. Data is everywhere, and we're using that to our leverage is what we as freight forwarders or logistics solution providers, we say that. I just spoke about predictable cost that comes only through data. The historical shipping, what you do, how much have you shipped, what the rate index looks like, is all that is there. But has that really evolved? Is that really helping? Now, we need to step back and think about it, whether, data is the only key driver for us. because as much as the math that you can do sitting at the table, you can't predict what the situation is going to be like. So data to be used, yes. Data is everywhere, yes, but are we making use of the data? Yes, we're making use of the data by building dashboards, by building, visibility, transparency, but are we really building the predictability or the predictive index for the customers is something that we are still evolving, I would say. We are not yet there, but there is an intent in the logistics and the shipping industry to say that we want to leverage that for our customers. Not only our customers, even say for us as an organization, we want to forecast that where is it the year would be landing. So yes, data is very important, but yet we are not yet there.
Thanks. Preeta, to you back. Have high-end volatile freight rates changed your market or customer mix? As an exporter.
As an exporter's perspective, yes, I would say a completely yes to it. Primarily, I would take back my memory to the Corona times when the freight rates just went skyrocketing, all up from 1,200 and 1,400 freight rates to first it was 7,000, it went up to 10,000. Then I think it just went beyond numbers that we could actually foresee or forecast. And the only way that we could survive as a frozen exporter was we converted and adapted ourselves to a chilled exporter with the same product category but with a different product mix. And yes, from 28,000 containers, we could survive by sending several loads of 3,000s and 4,000s across the air, across to US till the freight rates was higher. But then over a period of time, we could build a certain reliability on our product with the AA grades thanks to the Visakhapatnam boats. And we traded across ports, we traded across the harbors, and yes, it was a great change of strategy, yes, product mix and also, adaptive nature.
Fantastic, absolutely superb. Chitra, how are fuel transitions and decarbonization investments influencing the freight rates and network planning?
So yes, decarbonization is reshaping the way we are looking at cost structures and network design. There's a huge lot of investment going around decarbonization. So if we were to start with the green fuels, that is ammonia, hydrogen, it is 3 to 4 times more expensive than the traditional bunker fuels. And also then comes the fleet enhancements that is needed to accommodate these changes, right? Retrofitting of vessels, new fleets with dual engine, new fleets with these new propulsion technologies. Parallelly, there's a huge lot of investment going on in port infrastructure development also, right? They are also in their journey to support the green initiative. So it is like, how are we developing the bunker fueling facilities there, electrification of the ports. So you would agree that there's a huge cost involved in this transition. And this cost, of course, cannot be absorbed by the shipping lines alone, right? This is very collaborative. We are all in it together. This is a common goal that we are all having. So yes, it has to be shared uniformly and visibly across the whole supply chain. Yeah. So when it comes, so that's about decarbonization and how it is affecting our industry. So there are other things also that we are doing as a shipping line. There is these countries and regulatory bodies also who's introducing emission trading charges. For example, the European Union ETS surcharge, correct, which calls for the shipping lines to pay for 100% of their carbon emission in their journey through European Union. So the carriers have now introduced ETS surcharges, right? Which is then of course passed on to the customer. The quantity can be selected based on the route you're selecting and the distance that you're selecting, but this is essentially reflecting that cost of compliance. So the carriers are, the customers are willing to pay the cost today. It's a part of their invoice copies and it's an accepted cost today. Similarly, shipping lines are also coming up with a shipping green premium. Okay, this is to support the customers' ESG goals, and the quantum again can be selected depending upon the amount of carbon emission you want to reduce. But yes, most of our BCO customers globally have accepted this charge and they are paying for it, in their emission saving journey. Another cost-effective way is slow steaming, which means the vessels will be moving at a slower speed so that there is lesser burning of the fuel, and as a process you're reducing your carbon emission. But what happens is that you're not able to then maintain the same transit time, right? So then you have to introduce more vessels in the loop to maintain that cycle. So for example, if India to US East Coast necessarily has around 7 vessels that we need to complete the use, we need to use 9 vessels now to complete the loop. But what happens in the process is that it increases the capital expenditure of the shipping carriers to buy new vessels to conclude that loop. So yes, there is a cost, and this cost is indeed affecting the freight. But I would say, Dr. Sharmila, that decarbonization is no longer a 2030 goal. It is definitely a primary driver of our costs and network design.
For me, it's a simple thing. Everybody in this business is here to make money. At the end of the day, everybody wants to see the color green. We love the color green, whether it's in the form of decarbonization or solar or any energy that you talk, it's green, green, green. So is the color of money. So I totally stand with you that everything starts with the green, and we also want the green. Coming back to you, Joyce, how reliable are digital rate indices in predicting future trends, especially during black swan events? Now, ladies, I have a rapid fire round also for you, and I have a third question also for you. So if you guys are going to take long, these guys are going to remain hungry and they're going to keep cursing us internally. They can't do it because they don't have the mics, but we need to make it quick for them and interesting.
Yes, Ben. Yes, Ben. Okay. So if you work with Freightos, you probably have access to all our big data tool, benchmarking tool. If you use us for rate and quote and book, you will always see, given a given lane, the volatility as well as the trend, right? This is the services, the data we provide to our community. And we also do have our Freightos terminal where you have access to FBX, which is an ocean index, as well as FAX, which is Freightos Air Index. So we have been creating, maintaining, and enabling freight indices for the last, I think, 6 years from now, 6 years already. Now, coming back to your question, we build up our indices to reflect where the market is. So it's a reflection of the market. If you are interested in a given lane, if you want to know globally what is going on, import, exports, ocean and air, you want to know group of origin ports, for example, North Asia to US West, you have access to all that. But we didn't design the data tools to predict the future. And I don't think we can do that independently. I would love to say we can, but we can't. It's a lie. What does it mean? Because to predict the future, you have to intake the world events, the capacity, the congestions, everything. You have to take everything into consideration. Historical rate data, or what is happening in the real rate data right now, is one data source. But if you really want to predict the future, you need multiple sources. And I know this is happening because, first of all, rate data in our industry is very, very kind of a privileged, right? And AI fuels on top of data, a good data, not bad data, good data. So, in the last, I don't know, 1 year, there are hundreds of new AI companies coming to us asking if we can support their AI play to help freight forwarders and the shipping industry become more digitally enabled when it comes to like a future, predicting the future, rate predictability and all that. So in short, we cannot do that independently by ourselves, but we welcome the opportunity to work with all the technology companies and all the freight forwarders, all the players to make that happen.
Thank you, Joyce. To the point. Deepa, I first to ask you, what challenges do feeder operators face in India and emerging markets? Is it port efficiency, vessel availability, or the cost pressures?
Looking at the scenario right now, like everybody is talking about it, the market has been changing. Okay, so the volatility of the market is so very, it's so relative term for any operator, be a feeder operator, be a mainline operator. So while we look at it, the vessel sizes, as I rightly mentioned earlier also, is a very important knack for Indian ports, whereby we have to be very adaptive. The agility word, which we normally hear a lot these days, that's so important because unless and until we are agile, we'll never be able to, be of help to others. So that's where we come in the picture, where as a feeder operator, we have to make sure that, we have to just immediately adapt to a change in a constant go. So there's no time to think about. The scheduling, like rightly just now Chitra mentioned, the schedule goes haywire if you try to add a vessel into the consortium, Such things is where the relativity goes on, where we have to be very, very, precise with the scheduling of a vessel. The ports also, like you said rightly, there's congestion everywhere. Even on the Indian coast, we have been having a lot of problems. We'll not blame the ports also for them, because the market, the volume, the scale in which India is now growing, it's absolutely huge. It is something which is beyond imagination. 10 years back, we never had predicted that the volume is going to go full like this. Like Mundra terminal is completely full now. Nhava Sheva terminal, all the terminals are going full. So that is a good sign basically for our trade. But at the same time, how and in what way we adapt to it, and when we try to evolve ourselves with some changes which we can bring in by systems and with the way we try to give to a trade is going to be really, very important.
Thank you so much. We have a lady here from JNPT, Ambikaji here, and she's going to tell you that they're giving you a lovely, superb new port, which is going to be the 10th largest port in the world. So here's to Ambikaji and thanks to JNPT for doing this to India, I think. So coming back to you, Hetal, again. What unique challenges do you face in risk management and cost control for oversized and heavy lift cargo?
Hi. So the unique challenge that we face for the project cargo is to handle with care and a safe delivery of the cargo. So there is a lot of risk involved in it. We have to understand the project very well. The cargo dimensions, the lifting points, the lashing points, and how to lift the cargo, and at the same time, the letter of credit terms. So in this case, I would like to highlight, we had a shipment execution with Sharmila Madam's company last year, and the first shipment that we executed had a LC terms of on-deck cargo, and whereas the second shipment had a compulsory under-deck cargo. And it was 11 meters of the height, and it was so difficult to get the vessel availability. So it is very important to execute the project cargo to understand all the terms and dimensions of the cargo. And from the logistics part, if I say, the very important thing is route survey. If the project cargo gets stuck in en route due to the bottlenecks on the road, then it can really create the entire project delayed. Okay. So in this case, we had a case where the cargo was to move. It was a water heater bath to be moved to Nhava Sheva. It was just ahead of Navratri in Mumbai. And entire roads were blocked with the banners. And unfortunately, that cargo could not move to the Nhava Sheva due to its height. And then to find out the solutions, we could understand that it had angles on it. And then we managed to remove those angles and we could move it. But then there was a risk that the vessel got delayed by 7 to 10 days and the shipper had to undergo the payment of detention. With another very important factor, the risk management here to handle the project cargo is weather conditions. So as we all know, the Adani, Dahej and Adani Hazira is a tidal port. And we had a case where we had to load the cargo. It was just around the monsoon season, and due to the tide restrictions at the port, the vessel goes down during the low tide by 8 to 9 meters, and by the time you get the project cargo loading sequence done to load the cargo, the tide will go down. So there was a lot of risk in handling the cargo. Another risk here is port congestion. The port congestions really leads to the delay in the entire project, and that needs to be worked out well in advance. And the last but not the least is geopolitical situation. From the last 2 years, we have been facing this, and with this geopolitical, if the Suez Canal was closed in between, the Strait of Hormuz is closed now. See, if the vessel has to route via Cape of Good Hope, then it takes a longer route and a lot more cost involved in it. With regards to the cost control, if I have to mention, the heavy lift project cargo, you have to really be very careful and mindful. But however, we at CTEC, we try to work out on the combinations cargo. So if there is a combination cargo in the same direction is available, then it becomes a pocket friendly for the shipper, as well as it generates more revenue for the carriers. So that is one of the solutions. The second solution for the cost control is we'll have to work out with the dimensions. If the cargoes can fit on Ro-Ro vessel, or it can go on a MAFI, which is a cost which can control the cost. So, and another third factor is nowadays the container line is loading under break bulk mode. So that is because it has a schedule to call that port, and because of that, it can be a cost effective. And the last but not the least, we can work on the port infrastructure. If the port infrastructure is available with regards to the heavy lift cranes and the slings availability, the cargoes can be loaded either on a gearless vessel or on a break bulk vessel on deck the cargoes. So these are so we have to really handle the project cargo with the care, and we have to deliver it safely. Thank you so much.
Thanks a lot. Now the last round is to be really quick, because I have 3 rapid round questions. So I start with Divya again. Quickly, look at the clock. When you talk, you get exactly 1 minute. How do you see the role of forwarders evolving as price negotiators or supply chain orchestras?
As partners, as truly partners, because it was said in the past. So from vendors to service providers to partners, it has a journey which the freight forwarders has gone through. Earlier it was just looked at that, as I said, it is a vendor who moved from point A to point B. Today we are on a table to talk about a consultant, in a form of consultant, that what would we suggest them to do. Those conversations are much more serious. Earlier it was looked at that the total over product cost, supply chain would contribute to a 6 or a 7% of it. So it's not necessarily where a CEO or the leadership team of the customer would like to meet the freight forwarder, but today that's no longer the case. It's truly, I see it's evolving to a much larger scale of partnership, where it's on the table saying that what would you suggest? We follow you on what you are suggesting. Of course, there are multiple conversations. The competitiveness to be in the game is much higher. It's no longer just quote a price and you get. It's much more serious. So it's a serious business, wherein supply chain earlier, or even the awareness of this as a freight forwarding company wasn't there even. When I was doing my master's, people were like, what does freight forwarding even mean? So today people know what does a supply chain, those words at least are familiar. People earlier would just know a Maersk or a DHL, even the awareness of a Kiran-Nagal or a DSV or a CY is on the table. So I think we have evolved a lot.
I'll come back to that story later on, since we don't have time now. Manisha, quickly with you. Are mid-sized shippers at a disadvantage in this market, or can technology level the playing field?
I think when we talk of mid-size exporters, I think that's the need for every business. And how they can advantage is, again, using technology, making faster decisions, being agile, and working towards partnership rather than spot. I think that's the way forward for them.
Great. Preeta, coming back to you. What do exporters expect from logistic partners today that they did not expect earlier? What do you expect from us?
It's a very tough question to, like somebody said, we expect you to be movers and shakers. Move our cargo without shaking the ground beneath us. Does that give you a holistic reply?
Give me a very good reply, which I'm going to make you move and shake soon.
Thank you.
Do you see, Chitra, tell me, do you see long-term contracts regaining importance, or will the market remain spot-driven?
So post-COVID, we have seen a series of disruptions, like just the one that we have been seeing now also, geopolitical, congestions, network disruptions. So along with these rising uncertainties, there is also an increasing trend that we see among the customers to lock in long-term contracts. Because with contracts, customers also know comes security and commitment. So we are seeing a trend to increase the contracts, and what happens in committed contracts is that there is mutual commitment, right? The carriers also know that their space is not going unutilized, and the customers know that their cargo is staying protected. So, and also it helps planning better. The carriers are also able to plan their vessel, their equipment. Similarly, customers are able to manage their production cycles better so that they stay to the commitment. So there is revenue stability for the carriers and space assurance for the customers. And also we see that carriers, the contracts are also evolving to be more flexible these days. It's not linked to a fixed pricing. It is, we offer something called an index pricing because it's then linked to an external market reference. So customers are also protected that in terms of volatile market situation, when the rates drop, their space and cargo is still secure. And having said that, I would say that market spots are also very important because spots again, when the market is uptight and the carrier wants to capitalize the situation, that's when they use the spot rates and then to manage no-shows. And mid-sized customers, they can't park those kind of scale of volumes, right? So they have to rely on the spots. And then you have your seasonal peaks, you have your unexpected lot cargo, short sea, you can't lock short sea in long term. So I would say market will not be 100% contracted, but it will be largely having a good amount of long-term contracts and leaving the rest to be played in spots. So more of a hybrid model. And the customers and the carriers who are managing that fine balance between commitment and flexibility, they are the ones who are better positioned to manage future markets, I would say. Thank you.
I agree with you. Joyce, quickly with you. What is the next big digital leap for ocean freight? AI pricing, automated procurement, or end-to-end visibility?
That is a topic for a startup. First of all, if anyone can figure this out, that is, you can go ahead and start a new company. I think it's all both, all of that, but most importantly, let's bring it down to earth at a practical term. The next big leap for everyone in this room should be good data. Structured data of rates, quotes, and everything. And then, let's say that right now, what are you doing for rates and quotes? If you say it's Excel, Google Drive, Microsoft Office, then I will argue that the whole development of artificial intelligence, what is going to happen in the next 10 years, may not be really relevant to you. You have to start from somewhere. If you are already digitized, God bless you, great. You will be moving towards faster AI-empowered pricing, full automated procurement, all that. You will be leveraging, growing, and thriving on top of those topics. But if you are not, do something, anything, to digitize your rates first, so that in the next 2 years, you will be enjoying all the AI plus agent technology that will help you do quoting and customer service much better and more efficiently.
Great, thank here. Deepa, what challenges do feeder operators face? And I asked you this question already, sorry. Can short sea shipping play a larger role in decongesting ports and reducing the emission?
That's a real good term, short sea shipping, Basically, the regional connectivity of any operator within the coast of India matters a lot. After working with the group for so many years, I've realized that, you have a connectivity between two different ports anywhere on the coastline of India. It's a big coastline that we have in India. And the privilege that, we get over here is basically, you're able to convert a lot of landline cargo also onto sea. So that's where you are getting into business. You don't have to have only the main lines and the NVCs coming in. There's a coastal stream also which is there, which is relevant. And that cargo keeps moving on and off. Instead of roads and the other connectivities, it's being translated out over here. So what I would like to say over here is a tailor-made package is something what, an operator should be able to offer. That is just the requirement today of the day. Today's trade, as we've all heard about, everybody just looks at the best part of it. Give me the best. We have no compromises to make, So the requirement is what we need to get to know, and the agility in which form we can be flexible to get that and bring it on the table is going to be very important over here. So I feel that, there are a lot of things which are still unexplored. There are a lot of things that can bring in changes into this, trade which we have. But then the attempts are going to be one after the other.
But I thought the government of India is working, giving you the inland river waterways, the port to the land connectivity by doing the Gati Shakti and all those forms. So I think, is that helping you also?
It is, in a way, it's definitely helping, yes.
Coming back to you, Hetal, quickly, is India positioned to become a stronger project cargo hub, especially for energy and infrastructure projects?
Yes, absolutely, yes. India is a huge market for the turbines, modules, transformers, and the energy and solar related products. And government has been putting a lot of efforts for the modernization of the ports and its connectivity. At the same time, the private companies has been following the digital platforms, and they have been using a digital tracking systems. So basis all the modernizations and the infrastructure availability, I see that India is in a better position in the future for the project markets for the energy and the solar.
Good for me and good for you.
Yes.
We're two strong people
Yes.
in project business.
Yes.
Now is my rapid fire. Only one word you all are supposed to use. Anybody cheats will not get the lovely gift that Sudhirji is giving. So one word to describe today's ocean freight market. We start with you, Chitra, and all of you can come in a line like that. One word to describe
Tumultuous.
today's ocean freight market.
Tumultuous.
Okay.
Action-packed.
Heavily volatile.
Adaptive.
Uneven.
Accountability.
Evolve and collaborate.
Look at the adjectives, the pronouns, all of you, look at this description. I mean, if I had to make a movie, I could add all this and, and now you will see the song that I'm going to make after this, with all these words that you'll have used.
Different perspectives from different sectors and
Absolutely,
verticals.
absolutely. Cost versus reliability. Again, what wins in 2026?
Reliability on all through the way.
One word,
Reliability.
cost versus reliability. What wins in 2026?
Reliability.
Madam, in Project Cargo, it is both cost and reliability works together.
You will not get a present.
No, it's okay. But I'm being,
Okay.
open.
Okay. Preeta, come.
Reliability. Supply chain breaks faster than budget these days.
Okay, fantastic.
Reliability with guarded cost.
Definitely reliability.
Yeah. Deepa, you?
Service industry, reliability.
Okay, so all of them are, at least this one, all of you are on the same thing, except probably the most unpredictable business in this, because I'm going to discuss it with Sudhirji after this. Now, how does it feel to be, this was, we were sitting outside and talking, and suddenly I think Chitra mentioned something, and I said, you know what, I'm going to use this. I'm really going to use this question, and I'm going to ask you guys, how does it feel to be on the hotbed now? Now, there is no pun in this, because I know all of you are married, but how does it feel to be on the hotbed today? You all don't know what to tell me. I love this. How does it feel to be on the hotbed today?
I'm sorry, can you explain what hotbed means?
I'll take that.
The position you are in today.
Sorry, I thought about something else.
That's why I was very clear. No pun intended.
It would be cautious.
You'll be cautious to be on that hotbed? Okay. Chitra, you?
I think Divya mentioned that everyone who comes to the office keeps asking her what is going to happen to the freight, what is going to happen. So we are not the crystal gazers, but yes, uncertain, I would say, yeah.
I think dynamic predictability. And it sounds different, but it's constantly, predictability is changing, and that's where I say a dynamic credibility is what...
You're on a
everyone is
hot
looking
bed.
at.
You're supposed to be unpredictable on that bed, huh? Think twice. There's no pun.
I think it is a secured position because your
See.
many years knowledge.
She's using the double meaning now. Look at that. Okay. What about you, Preeta?
Be grounded, be simple.
So many on a hotbed?
That's the only way you go along.
What about you?
I'm so excited. I love to think AI, even though AI is not a person, but at least people start to talk about technology in these parts of the world. I'm very excited to see how we will be able to use technology for our benefit, not being overwhelmed, but how we use it.
Great. I'd like to see that on the hotbed. What about you, Deepa?
Out-of-box solutions to people, you know,
Great,
beyond
fantastic.
toes.
Absolutely. You know what? And I'm going to end this session, and we are open to anybody who would like to ask equally rapid round questions to any of my esteemed panel members who've been just absolutely great, fantastic, and very nice with us. And you know, first of all, everybody thanks Sudhirji and all the women and wish them a happy Women's Day. But let me assure you, men in this room, even the word woman has got the word men in it. So we are so thankful for all of you men here today who are here to encourage all these women. Thank you, men, for being here with us and being a part of the women. Thank you so much. Anybody would like any questions before we'd like to end, so that, you know, your tummies can get filled now with lunchtime? Anybody? Oh, you do have one. Oh, great. Please give your name, your company, and who are you addressing this question to?
Yeah, hi, this is Dharmesh. I represent Gujarat Maritime University, and this is question for carriers. That we all understand that there are a lot of entry barriers with regard to high vessel costs. My question is, does the initiatives offered by GIFT IFSCA, do they address this problem to any extent? This is one. And my second question is, to what extent the absence of Indian PNI, impact, today and tomorrow? Thanks.
Chitra, you can do it, or Deepa, you can answer, since both of you are vessels.
So basically, to answer your question, the vessel operators, as we discussed some time back, you know, out of India, in foreign, you have a lot of leverage. Regulations in India have been very rigid. So, you know, with the size of vessels, as we said, on the coast of India, as we mentioned, Calcutta Port, for example, you have a very, very rigid restriction, okay? So when we are getting a size of a vessel and not able to make money in that coast, we still are existing on that particular terminal. Why? Because the trade demands. Calcutta Port is not changing, but there is a demand for the port, the terminal all around. So there are instances where you have to be little agile and little flexible, where 6 months we make money, the other 6 months we cannot make money. It's a tidal effect, you know. So these challenges are definitely there for the operators, and there's no way out unless until there's going to be a progression or a change from the terminal side. So to answer to your first question, on the regulation part of it, I think there's a lot of it coming in from the government also, to try and help how we try and develop business. But then the taxation that we have, the taxes that we have in India, you know, that is something which needs to be really worked out. Because there's a huge difference between what a foreign flag vessel pays as against an Indian flag vessel pays. So that differentiation will never come in, and we'll never be able to compare. The transshipment in India, you know, has been always a major issue. Like Vizhinjam, it immediately had a lot of volume coming into Vizhinjam with MSC line working close, you know. The same thing we tried so many times in so many other ports. So I think that attempt has to be there from the trade, along with the operators and the carriers, to make sure that, you know, we all march towards it, because there's a lot of volume going to Colombo, Jebel Ali, Singapore, you know, which can still be handled in India. So we still have a long way to go to ensure that we make a good transshipment hub in India. to answer to you. So these regulations and the statements or notifications which come from the government will have to be very, very customer friendly, which is a requirement and need of the trade at the moment, and which is a serious issue.
Sure. There's a gentleman at the back, please, if somebody can give him a mic. Now you can stand up, and if you're loud enough, we can hear you.
India sea trade la engala I am coming from Madurai, from Tamil Nadu Chamber of Commerce Export Promotion Center. We are members, 600 to 1,000 people are there in Madurai. Your organizing committee invited as a delegate. We came from our Export Promotion Center, 3 peoples. I want to know the Vizhinjam export, the Vizhinjam that one port is coming, how it will help to our country. Second, the other countries in India, 33 or 32 council is there. Registering the council and become the exporter is very difficult. But in Dubai, in UAE and all things, only one license, they can make all things import and export. That we have to convey the message to our government of India. Our Prime Minister Narendra Modi is willing to support all small exporters. In Kerala, people are educated and they are doing so many countries in small product. Our government of India and the Tamil Nadu government is initiating all small farmers and small peoples become the exporters. We came here to know more about this, your delegates and all things. We want some support from our your sea trade people leaders to educate our Tamil Nadu Export Promotion Center to do more export from our India. Thank you.
First of all, sir, thank you for your questions. Let me answer to you honestly. With regard to Vizhinjam, we have a lady here, the chairman of the port, who is going to be here in the afternoon. You can please direct your questions to her. And yes, we are saving close to $800 or $850, saving the transshipment cost, which we probably would pay to Colombo or to Singapore. Regarding your second question to the Prime Minister of the country, I don't think anybody here has Mr. Modi's personal phone number, but you can write this to us, and all of us represent either FFAI or MTOI or any of these associations which are directly linked or questioned by the government. For sure, we will pass on your request to the government on behalf of these associations for you. Anybody else?
Yeah, good afternoon. I am Prakash Iyer, representing Seahorse Group at Cochin, and also representing Kerala Steamarine Association. Wonderful program I could see today, and I congratulate you because we celebrate 8th as the Women's Day, and you are doing it in 1 day in advance. So thank you. Now my question is, one is to Diba Joshi. Like, she was speaking about the cabotage law relaxation and it affects your business here. Your means the Indian ship owners. What prevents you in enhancing your capacity and compete with the international players? That is one question to you. Is it a government issue or the registration formalities which affects you, or the cargo or the cost factors to you? Number 2, the other question is to Preeta, the exporter. What is your plan of action for to cross this current Gulf, West Asia issues, the airstrikes and the war issue? How I think you have your own ideas how you crossed over during the COVID season. Thank you.
Thanks, Prakash, for your question. Basically, the trade has to face the reality that the volumes which are growing have to be, we have to ensure that we are able to cater to them, okay? As you rightly mentioned yourself, that the regulations definitely are going to be a challenge, which are being worked by a lot of authorities, and there's a lot of work happening over it over a period of years is what we've seen. So there has been a big change over a number of years that we've seen. The cost for a vessel, for an Indian flag vessel, as I mentioned, the owners, there are very few owners who want to really invest into Indian flag vessels. So that is at stake basically because it's a big, huge cost. All the vessels which were there, they're all old vessels now, So now it actually is the right time wherein there will be a lot of shift, there will be a lot of movement happening from the ship owners, whereby there will be a lot of contribution from their side, which will help us to get more tonnage to help on the coastal trade altogether. While I talk on this, I will have to repeat again that the taxation is so immense that, that part has been really eating up the costs. So we have to ensure, accept that, the facilitators have to be taking good decisions to ensure that at least the taxation should be on some way, there has to be a leverage. There's no comparison between foreign flag vessels and Indian flag vessels, So it's not a cry or a plight, but then it's a fact. It's a challenge which we've been facing for ages. But in spite of that, we've been giving a service to a trade as operators is what I believe in. So we'll just wait for the government bodies to definitely work towards it. I'm sure they are aware of this. It's just a matter of time that we'll definitely, after 2 years when we speak, I'm sure you will be the person saying that, okay, things have really changed, So I have that confidence and we've been looking over it for all these years throughout. Thank you.
Mera Bharat Mahan, Government of India has set up Bharat the Container Lines. So before her 2 years, our 1,000 ships of SCI should also be here to solve your problem.
Yes, to answer the second question, with regards to the volatility in the market, as I rightly said in my first question, there are always a stack of volatility which you have to deal with every single day, be it the Red Sea attacks, be it the, we have all faced a plethora of those. And soon coming are also the carbon emission problem. So every single day, you are in a hot seat and you be adaptive to whatever tantrums or whatever situations are being thrown to you only by intelligently building a system. Building your partner, building a set of people who you can work with, your partners around you, system around you, partners across the borders, logistics partners, and stay put with them, which is what has given me the insight. What my dad has built 50 years before as a system is not relevant today. In fact, what he built 10 years before is not relevant today. So every single day, you possibly have to make as much mistakes as possible so the next day, you make it right. I think that is the only way that I have made my decisions a little better than what I have done yesterday. Thank you.
Great, fantastic, congratulations. Anybody else, anything? You do, there is one more. The mic's right next to you, lady.
Hi, good afternoon everyone. Wishing you all a happy Women's Day. I come from Total Transport Systems. My name is Priya Suresh. I have a question anybody can answer. So I want to know what will be the impact of the AI in our industry. Will it be, because as of now we could see there are so many people completing their courses in the logistics and willing to join our trade, but how far it will be good for them, like whether they all can be accommodated in this trade due to the challenge which we are facing through the AI?
I'll take that. I think AI is only going to be an enabler. And when you talk of logistics, logistics is a business of people. So people will not fade away in logistics, and that's very true. We will only build smarter logistics solution. We will build predictive solutions for our customers, and AI will be the enabler for us to help us thrive. So that's how I see it individually, because it's a people's business at the end of the day.
I have a slightly different perspective, if I may. We also have a division that provides software to Fortune 500 shippers, larger BCOs. So first of all, what will AI do? AI plus agent, what does it mean? It means that first of all, you do not have to be restricted to any user interface or UI or front end developed by any software company anymore. I'm not talking about right now, but I'm talking about maybe in the next 5 years. What does that mean? Meaning with the right commercial architect in your own organization, with the right technology architect in your own organization, 2 people plus AI, you will be able to develop, to own, and change all your workflow from a technical standpoint, right? When we say digitization, we often say digitization is distortion, meaning you have to distort yourself, your workflow, your nature, your company, the way that you work to fit digitization. I really hate to say that. I really don't believe that is true. But with AI coming to picture, well, actually by the end of February in Mumbai, there was an Air Cargo India event. Our booth was swamped by CEOs, managing directors, and the second, third generation of freight forwarding company. Everybody's asking, what are we going to do about AI? I think AI, first of all, is going to change the way you work. You will be able to do that in a much beneficial, much efficient way. The Fortune 500 shippers are already implementing AI, and we are also an AI practitioner, by the way. Tendering, bidding, rate refreshes, procurement, all that. So it's really, to answer your question, your third question, ma'am, it's happening, right? So that is going to happen. I really believe that's going to be the next 2, 3, or 4 years. So good thing is just pay attention to it and think about what you can do with AI, empowering you digitally, and develop your own user interface, your own front end, and we and the ocean carriers and airliners becoming the enabler for data. So freight as a service, that is really the big turn to pay attention to in the next 2, 3 years.
I would just take a minute. I would echo what Manisha has said. I don't feel AI is here to challenge or threat. I feel it's going to elevate the whole standard. It's going to enhance. When we say change, I would use that AI is not going to change, it's going to evolve, which means the whole standard of what we do today things, it is going to take away that, which means that there's so much of manual redundant work that exists. AI is going to take that out, and it is going to, as I said, it is going to enhance, and the discussions and the quality of conversations are going to definitely change. But I don't think any change is to be looked at as a threat. We need to welcome that, because that's only the way forward, and it's going to change the whole face of how logistics works today.
I will end it again with a lovely sentence. You know, in the Gita Sarvi says, "Jo hua, acha hua, jo hoga wo bhi acha hua." But the last sentence says, "Parivartan sansar ka niyam hai." So change is inevitable in life. So we have to uplift this. Now, I am not going to run a summary on what all my colleagues said or give a briefing on it, but I have a lovely thing. I would like all of you to step in the front. Right here. And I want my lovely colleague to play this song for me, which actually defines what I'm trying to say, is the summary of what our panel conclusion was.
जिंदगी एक सफर है सुहाना, यहाँ कल क्या हो किसने जाना। जिंदगी एक सफर है सुहाना, यहाँ कल क्या हो किसने जाना। जिंदगी एक सफर है सुहाना, यहाँ कल क्या हो किसने जाना। अरे ओले ओले ओ।
Thank you for a fantastic audience. Thank you so much.
Sharmila, for making this such an exciting and innovative session. Thanks a lot. We enjoyed it also.
Absolutely. I mean, I knew she was going to throw up some surprise at the end, but this was amazing. That's the first time we ever played some music on an India Sea Trade event. So that's another history made. Thank you so much, Sharmila, ma'am.
Most welcome. Sudhirji, I have another request to do for you. Lots of people on the panel and of course spoke about projects. There are lots of boys in the room, but there are only few men in the projects. When I say men, I'm adding the women, men. So please have another session next year on the boys watching and the men talking.
Thank you so much. All right, so on that note, let's give them a loud round of applause. This was by far one of the most engaging panel discussions ever. done by India Sea Trade, and I'm sure it's going to be one of the best today. Thank you so much for doing it, and kindly be seated, ma'am. And now to do the honors, to present a token of our appreciation to all of these panel members, I'd like to invite on stage Ms. Rajani Pradeep, Branch Head, Seva Logistics, on stage. Ladies and gentlemen, a loud round of applause as she walks up on stage. I know hunger trumps all applause, but that's really not acceptable. We need a louder round of applause for all these women. And Ms. Rajani Pradeep walking up on stage to do the honors. And to receive the memento, I'd like to invite forward Ms. Chitra Yeshudas. We'll go in that order. So Ms. Chitra Yeshudas, kindly step forward and receive the memento from Ms. Rajni. I request both the women to take center stage. Center stage, please. Yes, a loud round of applause. Our next panelist to receive the memento would be Ms. Divya James. Ms. Divya James, Head Air and Ocean Freight, Indian Subcontinent Seva Logistics. Kindly step forward, ma'am.
And Rajni is also from Siva, so I
Yes.
feel extremely encouraged, and thank you so much, Rajni. It's an honor to take it from you.
A big round of applause for both these women who supported each other. Our next panelist is Hethel Phillips, Director, CTech Shipping and Projects Private Limited. Ms. Hethel Phillips, kindly step forward. Thank you so much, Ms. Phillips. Our next panelist, Ms. Preeta George, Director, Starfish Exports Private Limited. Ms. Preeta George to receive the memento. Thank you so much for your presence, ma'am. Our next panelist, Ms. Manisha Malhotra, Vice President, Freight Forwarding Sales, SCO, DP World. Next, I'd like to invite Ms. Joyce Tai, Executive Vice President, Worldwide Partnership Fighters Group, to receive the memento. And that's, all of these mementos are so beautifully packed, reflects the tradition of Kerala. Thank you so much, Ms. Tai. And Ms. Deepa Joshi, Commercial Director, Unifeeder. May I request you to kindly step forward, ma'am? Our next not the panelist, our moderator today, Ms. Sharmila Amin. Let's welcome her forward to receive the memento. South Managing Director, Bertling Logistics India Private Limited, Dr. Sharmila Amin. Thank you for joining us and making this day absolutely special and unique with your presence. Now may I request all the ladies on stage to pose for a photograph together, please, all of you. It's a big round of applause for these women. Thank you so much, everyone.